Hello and welcome to New Filmmakers Los Angeles in partnership with Movie Maker magazine. My name is Danny DeLillo and I'm here with Alex with her fantastic film, The Rose of Manila. Let's take a look at the clip. Alex, I'm so glad that we get to do this together, and I just want to say a huge thank you from all of us at New Filmmakers LA for bringing your film to us to watch on the big screen. It was so special, so thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so much fun to screen it at the festival and to see it on the big screen with you all. It was so special.
In person, right? In
Hmm.
person. Um, well, honestly, I remember being in the room and hearing the reaction from the crowd. But obviously, I'd love to share, any of our audience that haven't seen the film. Tell us a brief synopsis.
Sure. So the film's called The Rose of Manila, and it follows a young teenage Imelda Marcos, who ended up becoming one of the Philippine dictators in the 1980s. But the story kind of follows her as she makes her way to compete in a beauty pageant in 1953.
This story is like iconic. Like it's amazing. I'm sure it's very much, people from the Philippines or Filipino descent know about it in neighboring countries and people at that time. But I found this story absolutely fascinating. It was so unbelievable that, this girl, just, ended up, in the role that she did in her life. When did you decide, Alex, that you wanted to make a film about this?
Yeah, it's been something. I mean, Imelda's been someone I've been thinking about my entire life, basically. When I was in fourth grade, I went to international school growing up in Manila, and in the social studies class, we watched this amazing film by Ramona Diaz that was literally called Imelda, and it's this feature-length documentary where you kind of get a taste of this very alluring, intriguing character, but when you actually listen to what she's saying, you're like, what is she saying? She's, so detached from reality. And I remember being 10 years old and just being so like taken by her and so repelled by her at the same time. Um, and so I think I came home that day in fourth grade and I told my mom, I was like, Mom, I saw this crazy movie. It was about this dictator. And she was like, oh, our family was actually that these dictators are the reason why our family moved to Los Angeles. So I've always been thinking about, how maybe if it hadn't been for this dictatorship, what would have happened? Would my mom still have met my dad? Because that's when they met in Los Angeles. Would I still exist? And so I think, this film really stemmed for this existential question of like, how did I come to this world? So it really came from this personal starting point that then I think kind of tumbled into this bigger question of thinking about how history is remembered, how collective memory works. And yeah, I think that's what I would say.
I mean, an amazing story in itself, you know. I mean, it's unbelievable how it's, shaped, your family's history, the country's history, and and it's sad because we're still in a day where dictators still exist, and you'd like to think we're in a better position, but we're truly not. Um, you know. Now, listen, the way that you orchestrated this film, the way you designed the look, the feel, the way that you delivered information was exquisite and really credit to your talent. Like I was mesmerized because I was transfixed by the story that you were telling. Did you know kind of the style that you wanted and how you kind of wanted to deliver the film? Because I thought it was extremely clever. I love the color grade and the feel of the whole film as well. And and it was eerie, because it was obviously truth. Tell us a little bit about that kind of part of the making of the film.
Oh, thanks so much for that thoughtful reading and question. Yeah, I think I started photographing when I was 11. So I started working in the darkroom and just thinking about composition. And I really think my filmmaking approach really stems from this deep love for photography and how bodies and faces kind of exist in the frame. So I think yeah, the visuals, the composition, and anytime I can really tell a story or convey information visually as opposed to through dialogue or through just like plot revelation, I think I try to grasp on that opportunity because I really see filmmaking as an inherently visual medium. Although I think, dialogue and language, there's so much exciting stuff that can happen there. And, the relationship between text and image and what people are saying and where they are. I think there's really exciting stuff that can happen there. But I think, yeah, I guess the visual references for the film, I was really inspired by Filipino films from the 1970s, especially the films by Lino Broca, who's an incredible director. He made this movie called Manila and the Claws of Light, that I think is truly like a perfect movie and really shows the grit, but also the beauty of a place like Manila. Um, and yeah, I think Martin Scorsese like restored that film like a few years ago, so it's like available to see online. But prior to a couple years ago, it was very hard to find like a proper print. I think there's like I watched that movie when I was like in college. Like on YouTube, and it was like at 360p, and I was just watching
Wow.
in my little dorm room.
Um, Now, I mean, I'm curious, like, for you, obviously making when you make a film that is, back in the 50s, for example, and having that background of, family, Philippine heritage as well, like, d- do you kind of did you still see the effects of that dictatorship? Did you kind of feel that in today, or is it kind of something you purely
Mm.
learned?
That's so interesting. Yeah, I think well, I think right, like this film, I think of it as a period piece, but I also think it kind of exists in this like timeless space where we're looking at the past through the lens of the present,
Yeah, yeah.
and I think yeah, like if you look at certain shots, it's kind of hard to tell it, you can't really tell that it's really from the 50s
No,
or
I love that you did that to us, though. It's very clever. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think that timeless aspect is really important to me to convey, especially the archival footage, to convey that in this one narrative story there can be the past and the present and the future, like a projected future kind of all coming together in the same space. And then I think to your second point, I mean, something I've been thinking about a lot since making this film, which I did right at the beginning of 2020, so like two months before the pandemic began, so almost 2.5 years ago, is that in the years since, Imelda Sun Bongbong, who's 64, I want to say, he's running for president and he's currently leading the polls. And it's really fascinating because uh, really, really fascinating because if you look at the stats, all of the voters, all of his supporters are folks who are under the age of 30. So that means that all of his supporters were born before the regime of his parents, which means that history is being rewritten and the story is erased. So I think, I mean, my hope is that this film, in this new context of the election, can hopefully like contribute to a bigger conversation of like what does it mean to what how, how's collective memory of a nation formed, and can film help remedy stories that were forgotten.
Wow, and that's unbelievable, isn't it? You just history repeating itself and how history can get erased, which is why, again,
Completely.
film is so important because, for those that don't know, it can really help us in understanding and educating us as well. Incredible. How did you, I mean, I'm always curious when you have to go back, how was it collecting the footage and how long was that process?
Yeah, oh my gosh. I'll say this, I'll repeat this story of that I always come back to. Oh my gosh. But basically I had this dream of filming the entire thing on 16 millimeter. And when you see the film, it kind of has this hodgepodge collage aesthetic uh of 16 millimeter and celluloid and the digital and the archival, which is, from the film Imelda that I saw in the fourth grade. So it kind of comes full circle. But um, what was I saying? Yeah, I think I had this dream of photographing the film in 16 millimeter, just because I really wanted to film the beauty of the Philippines in on celluloid, and show how the light is captured there and how the light falls there. Um, so I borrowed a beautiful Bolex camera from my school, and they let me take it all the way from the east coast of the US to Manila. And we filmed everything on the Bolex. I was the camera operator because I was the only one on set who knew how to use a film camera. And I collaborated with another DP who was handling all the digital backup. They really had no intention of using the digital backup footage. It was truly just a backup, and that's how I was considering it. But when I got back to school and sent out the film to be developed, it came back, basically all of it came back blurry, because
Oh
the pressure
wow.
plate, the pressure plate,
Yeah.
which was meant to uh, fix the lens onto the camera, wasn't properly put on, and I just had no idea, because I didn't really
Um,
know the technical intricacies of the camera.
yeah.
And so I basically, yeah, cried for a week and went to my advisor, and I was like, all our footage is, so much of it is blurry and unusable. Um, but he said, try and see what you can salvage and cut it into the digital, because you never know what could happen. So I did that, and brought it to him, and we looked at it together, and it was the kind of this collage of 16 millimeter and this old technology, and digital, very crisp, this new technology, and actually like seeing it together, kind of cut in together and spliced in together, really, I think was serving the story and this idea, this argument of the entire project, that multiple time is cyclical, and there are multiple, there's the present and the past and the projected future all happening at once, and that's something that I really see as exciting, like in film, the way that we can like represent time and how like kaleidoscopic it can be.
Absolutely. And congratulations on like coming through that because I would have cried for a year, I'm gonna be honest, like, that's a lot to go through and it's, magical because having to come back from that is a lot, but well done because you made a beautiful film in the end. It was
Thank
fantastic
you.
to see. I'm also curious as well, like, this is such a personal story, but it was also a big thing that happened to the Philippines and, universally a thing that I'm sure everybody was talking about at the time. What did you want your audience to take from your film?
Hmm. Oh, that's such a good question. Yeah, I think I really think that I really consider the film to be something, or to be a project and a story that um I think has multiple points of entry. So I think, there's the kind of the story about motherhood and loss of motherhood, and what does it mean to be the mother of a country. And then there's kind of the storyline of like celebrity and idolatry and stardom, and what does it mean to have that desire from such a young age. And then there's obviously like history and how it is archive and collective memory of a country. How is that formed through images and through storytelling? I mean, those are three kind of main threads, but I think kind of those questions I think are really exciting, and I don't think the film really comes to any conclusions, but rather I hope it just provokes individuals to think about these bigger questions about how history is constructed and how it's told, um, and then also how time might be cyclical or operate like a spiral.
Yeah, or repeat itself as it currently could be. Um,
Absolutely.
um, incredible. What is next for you, Alex?
I've been working for the last year and a half on a feature film that is similarly dealing with a young woman, but this time it's about an artist, and it's about a photographer whose life was cut short when she was 22, and she attended my university and my high school. So I feel like as an image maker who has kind of traversed the same geographies as um, subject and the main character I'm sort of trying to follow, I'm hoping to tell her story through a lens of creative vitality, and artistic potential, and just like the magic of photography and images, and the magic of living in the world through the eyes of an artist. Especially because this photographer in particular, her story in the kind of canon of art history and just in media in general and in scholarship, has really been told from the perspective of older men who didn't know her and who try to read tragedy and depression and all of these other things that I feel like aren't important to her story into her images. So really trying to tell her story from an alternative perspective that I hope can really inspire young women around the world and young artists around the world. And it's going to be a feature, so it's very exciting.
Amazing. Well, I mean, if it's, I mean, goodness me, if it's anything like, Rose of Manila in the way you deliver your films and the consciousness you have of just, art on the screen, then we're in for a treat. So I just want to say a huge thank you, Alex. This has been such a pleasure, and we're very grateful to have you part of the New Filmmakers LA family. And we're very excited to see your feature, and we're here for you until the end of time, basically, as alumni.
Thank you. Yes, time is a spiral,
Thank you
so
so very much.
thanks
Yes,
so
absolutely.
much.
We wish you the best. Thank you very much, Alex.
Thank you.